3, 2,
2, 1. All right, so this is the 5th episode of To Craft an Artist. Today we have Karl Summers and
our first guest
for the
It's an honor.
podcast.
I know. It's going to be awesome.
So I guess what we can start with is tell us a little bit about yourself,
I'm primarily a bass player.
Okay.
I grew up in Indiana, and I went to school at Indiana University at the Jacobs, and I studied the Jacobs School of Music.
Okay.
Are you guys familiar with the band The Main Squeeze?
Not totally.
No.
I hung out with them quite a bit. They're fantastic musicians and people, and I kind of, at the beginning, took a nosedive into the jam scene, and really went to town on my improvisation chops. Indiana has a really great jazz school, so we would just spend our weekends partying and improvising. And I would improvise in a multitude of different genres. So I was in. It was kind of hard to describe. It was a metal band, but we didn't write any songs. We just showed up, plugged in our instruments, and just started playing. And so we just took improvisation to as many new different levels as we could.
Yeah.
And the scene in Indiana, I feel like since I lived in a college town, it was very transient.
Yeah.
And after I graduated, it was everyone could tell you're a townie. And so the mountains were calling, and so I came out here. And I landed in another jam band called Technicolor Tone Factory, and we toured all over the West. We played shows in Wyoming and Utah and Idaho, Montana, and did a bunch of regional tours. That band later renamed themselves Legato, and I still play with them. We've kind of taken a heavier approach to it, so I'm revisiting my metal roots by playing with them. We've still got some jam-ish tendencies, but we're gravitating more toward like a gent metal and incorporating some Animals as Leaders influences into that. I've also played in a band called Envialo, which is a sort of a funkier jam band, more along the lines of New Master Sounds or Magic Beans. We've opened for them a few times and played Beanstalk. Lately, though, I've been focusing a little bit more on hip hop and neo soul and integrating jazz with hip hop.
Oh, okay.
I came out with a single last year called Checkmate, and it's under the pseudonym Big Sleeps.
Yeah,
and
check that out.
It's kind of like an Erykah Badu sort of feel to it, and I'm hoping to come out with a full album in that style here in the coming year or so, under the name Big Sleeps, and it's gonna kind of blend lo-fi chill hop with trip hop from the 90s, so some Portishead and DJ Shadow influences. And
That's actually really great that you're doing that, because we work in a space and place where we work with tons of hip hop artists.
Yeah.
Cool.
Tons. Well, it's because the industry's incredibly oversaturated. So
that's the majority.
21st century, anybody can hop on their computer, download, they don't even have to download anything. They can just go to bandlab.com. So, it's actually, the reason why I mentioned it's good what you're doing is because it's unique. It's in your own path, or semi-own path. I'm sure there's somebody else out there that's doing it.
Yeah, of course.
But if you can get good at it, it's niche down, and that's great. The artists that blow up, they've got their own sound, and then boom, it goes.
Yep, that's what I'm going for. I love hip hop. I grew up with it, and it's ingrained in my blood. I can't get it out.
Yeah, hip hop, not trap.
I like them both, but yes, hip hop.
Awesome. Who do you feel is really if there was somebody you had to look up to? I know, Connor, you've got some more questions, but the questions, they can be asked or
just going
not.
through the flow,
But I'm kind of curious, who's an inspiration for you within this genre you're working towards?
It's a great question. I really love, so it's funny, I say lo-fi chill hop, and that's completely different from the R&B and neo soul that I listen to mostly. I mentioned Erykah Badu earlier. She might be my all-time favorite. D'Angelo is very close behind her. But right now, there's a guy named Mac Ayers. Have you guys listen to him?
I've heard of him, yeah.
He's fantastic. He's got such a great voice. And I saw him like in 2019. He sold out Globe Hall, which is like a 200-person venue. And then I think just last year he came and played the Ogden. So it was so cool to see him like go from this tiny little stage and room to this giant room, and just see him grow. And that's really amazing. I also like a lot of I hesitate to call it jazz fusion, but there's a band called Butcher Brown. You ever listen to them? They're like they've got a big hip hop influence, but they integrate a lot of jazz fusion and sort of intricate compositions into their work as well. So I would say those two are like some huge up and comers. I'm sure I'm leaving a million out, but those are the first two that come to mind as huge influences on my style.
That's awesome.
One thing I wanted to ask, kind of touching back on the small venue that guy started out with, what was your first gig like?
Oh, awful. It just plays on the north side of Indianapolis called Birdies. And, well, I mean, gigs are kind of like, you know, if you like play in a basement to a bunch of friends, I guess you could call that a gig. Well, my first bar gig was atrocious. We played at this place called Birdies, and it's like known as the place where you just get started. And we were all between the ages of 16 and 18 in this band. It was the first band I've ever been in. And we played to like my dad and stepmom and the bartender. But thank God they were the only ones there, because I play bass, but I broke a string in the middle of this set, and I didn't bring a backup. I did bring an extra string though. So between songs, I'm over there telling my singer to just like entertain the crowd and like chat them up while I'm over there changing a bass string on stage. Like guitar strings, I feel like are broken much more on stage, but it was very embarrassing. Testament to my technique at the time. I'm like, well, we were breaking bass strings.
Kind of a shift from that being probably what I'd presume to be your worst gig. What do you think would be your best, and how was that?
Like 5 shows come to mind when you ask that. First one that comes to mind, are you guys familiar with the Mountain and Southern Sun breweries up in Boulder?
Yes.
Yeah.
They brew beer down here. Well, they might not anymore, but they used to brew beer at a place called Vine Street here in Denver. But they're a Boulder-based brewery, and they put on a festival in 2018 called the Kind Fest. And they're great friends with the String Cheese guys, so they had String Cheese Incident close it out. They had a whole host of big names play it. And to close out the festival after String Cheese, they had initially hired Analog Sun and sent him an offer, printed all the promo mats before they had time to get back to him. And so all the posters said Analog Sun. But then Analog Sun came back and said, we can't do the gig. Like, we have another better opportunity. And so they called Envialo. And so we closed out the show after String Cheese Incident. We're the only band playing in, what is it called, Planet Caravan, that big place up in Lyons. And we played like the indoor slot. And so after String Cheese, everyone just wandered over. And I'm not kidding you, thousands of people there. And I'm so glad I was wearing sunglasses, because I would not have been able to hide my excitement. Just watching all these people filter in. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, yep, this is real. This is big time. We hired the keyboardist from the Magic Beans to play that show.
Nice.
We hired a full horn section, and it was a really special night. That was absolutely incredible. There were a couple shows that we played at the Ogden, opening for Ghostlight, which were really cool. And the cool thing about the Ogden is that it's one of those venues that's like the audience is not illuminated at all, so you can't really tell who's out there, which is great, because if like sometimes you just catch glimpses of silhouettes, and then you're like, oh man, this place is full. Holy shit. Okay, I'm glad I'm playing okay, because otherwise. But this one show, oh man, I don't know how G-rated you want to keep this podcast, but
Go for it.
I took some mind-altering substances before the show, and we're a jam band, right? So we kind of got lost in the funk, if you will, and they started flashing like the flashlight at me, because we were supposed to end our set, and I had the talkback mic to like direct the band out of jams and like back into the song and whatever. And they were shining the flashlight, and I was so dazed that I forgot what song we were playing, let alone like what key we were in. So I'm over here like, oh God, and the whole band's looking at me like, what are we doing, dude? They want us off the stage, and so I'm like trying to remember, and so I like get back into the mic, and then I like cue us to get out, but then it was this miscommunication where some people on the stage saw the flashing light, so they just thought we were gonna end the song, but I still in my mind thought we had to finish the song, so I like go into the rest of the song, but then half the band stopped playing, and so it was like this. It was an otherwise fantastic show, right? Mm-hmm. Super creative with everyone on substances, right? And but the end was just such a sort of embarrassing. But I guess that was a long-winded way of saying I have many favorite shows for many reasons.
So one thing I was wanting to think. So how much time did it take between that first show and the second show? I'll just ask real quick, and then this kind of follows into a second question. Like, how many years do you think that it was?
At least 10.
At least 10?
Yeah.
So the second question I wanted to ask is, for people starting out, what are some common unrealistic expectations that people typically have?
Oh. I don't want to get too philosophical, but I think an artist going into an artistic endeavor with a specific result in mind, especially a monetary result, almost makes me think, unless you're working in music business, if you're the artist and you're going into it with the expectation to make a shitload of money in like a certain amount of time, and I might be alone in this, but I feel like you're pursuing art for the wrong reasons, and you're gonna end up making art that's impure.
Yeah.
And you're making it for the people, and you're not making it for yourself.
Yeah.
You always make it for both, right? But like the balance is going to be more toward the audience, and the audience is going to be so unpredictable and picky and smart that you could give it your all, and you could be like, this is exactly what the artist wants, right? And then they're going to pick it apart and just give you every reason why they hate it and why you have the wrong idea, and then you're going to be absolutely crushed because you don't even have a connection with it, right?
Yep.
So if you don't go into it,
just goes nowhere.
Exactly. So if you don't have that balance of, well, this is also for me. Like, yes, it's got to be accessible, and it has to be digestible by at least a certain size of the general public. But it's also like, if it doesn't satisfy you too, you're not going into it for the right reasons.
No, for sure.
Karl, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is a big topic. I mean, this is a great question from you. And the things you're saying, it's funny because it's like you're mirroring exactly what I tell people. I can't tell you how many times I get on the phone and I'm like, so what are your goals? And the artist will be telling me, well, I want to make $1 million this year. And I'm like, okay. And it's like right then, it's like a subtle, like subconscious register of like what kind of artist that is. Fake.
Yeah.
Fake.
Yep.
Because a lot of them are brand new. If they're saying that, they're brand new in the industry and they don't understand how it is.
They see the, people driving Lamborghinis, chains, all that stuff, and they're like, oh, if they want the X, lifestyle, then I get X.
Right. They're in it for the lifestyle, not the actual creative aspect of things. And what's ironic is the creative aspect of things is what gets you the lifestyle. I mean, if you, to some degree or another, I just think that music is, generally speaking, music is a product. As a business individual, right?
Yeah.
I view music as a product, and an artist should not. But what I believe the best product is obviously one that is going to be created from the most organic point of the artist.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to be the best quality at that point, and the artist is going to be able to stay consistent with it. I mean, in the industry, you have to stay consistent, or you flop. You said 10 years between show 1 and show 2, and you're probably not even where you want to be yet.
Yeah.
Nah.
So
exactly.
10 years, and there's some people that are like, this year is my year. And I'm like, well, you just downloaded BandLab. You got a long way to go.
I think that's a great attitude to say this is my year. You could go as far as say every year is my year, right? I think that's a great positive outlook to have. But this year is my year, that has a lot of meanings. That could have a lot of meanings. That could
Right.
mean I play Red Rocks. That could just mean that I sit in my bedroom and I make some of the coolest music that I think ever exists.
Yeah.
And that's still my year,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
That's a good message for all the artists out there that are kind of like needing it's so much about the mentality. 150%. You know, if you got the wrong idea about why you're going into it, monetarily, fame, whatever, or if, you know, like you just said, I mean, I'm happy you corrected me. Like, I was referring to it as in like, this is my year to go make $1 million, but like, it could be your year for anything.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
I've said that about, like, I've been in conversations where we've said that about our band. But
Mhm.
what we mean is external, not validation, but like external factors, right? Like, this is our year. And then it just so happened that year we won a contest that sent us to play summer camp out in Illinois. And
Awesome.
then like this is our year. And then, you know, that year we found a tour manager, booking agent who sent us out, you know, for a Midwest tour.
Yeah.
So this is our year, I think, should be more about an attitude than a specific external result.
You know what we're going
going
to call this podcast episode?
This is our year.
This is our year. I think it's a great topic to talk
Yeah.
about, you know. I think it's everybody's year, you know.
Mhm.
And that's what I think we should be. I mean, I know it's February, so we're kind of over the hump of like New Year's resolutions, but I think everybody should just choose a very like a goal from themselves that they actually think they can accomplish, and they should work towards it, and they should call it their year. And it's also just about the mentality like you're getting at, you know, if you're like, I am going to make big things happen this year, and then, you know, it's just kind of that whole manifest destiny kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So kind of harkening back to what you were talking about when people say, I want to make, you know, like, what do you want to do with music? People say, I want to make $1 million. I think John Mayer said it really well when he said there's this I don't know what the word, there's this overarching theme where people think that the general public is just really stupid and
Yeah.
like not intelligent. And I'm sure you could say that in a lot of, I don't know, I guess in a lot of respects, maybe people are right when they say that. But especially when it comes to like music consumption, the general public, and especially people that are diehard music fans, they're like so smart and so it is like so cutthroat, the popular music industry is, because there's such a plethora out there, and kind of harkening back to what you were saying, if someone goes into it saying they want to make $1 million, the general public's going to see through that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, I can tell that this person doesn't feel this. Unless you're just like the best actor in the world and you can
Yeah.
make something and be like, and sell it, right? Which
But-
you always have to sell it. But there's not a lot of fulfillment in overacting.
Most people are just not that sophisticated to where
Yeah.
they can do that, and people see right through it.
Exactly.
You want to know a funny story? So I was talking with there's a guy that previously managed Yeet. Familiar with Yeet?
Yeah.
And it was before he was doing anything. And I mean, this guy has such a unique and kind of weird, like, I like his music, but it was so new. Everybody's like, what is this? But there's videos of like young Yeet in his like bedroom, just like doing his thing. And it was like totally weird. Everybody was like, what is this? But he was, and I think, you know, he talked a little bit about this, and I don't know what interview it was exactly, but I just watched a video where he was talking about it, and he said that he actually set out just because he liked listening to his own music.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't like anything anybody else makes. He's like, so I made my own stuff.
That's hysterical.
I know. I was like, huh. So you just had like an MP3 player loaded up with like all your own music?
It might be a little conceited, but
It could be. And he was like, who do you look up to? He's like, nobody, me. It's like, so that's like the extreme other end of it.
you
know
like what
I mean?
you like. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
And he just came out, and this guy that previously managed him was like, he saw the potential and just how hard he was working. He was telling everybody at the label, he's like, he is going to blow up. But the
Yeah.
label that he was with, and for legal purposes, I won't like clarify, but the label was like, no, we don't want this record deal. And then 2 years later, I was like, dang.
They're
So
probably kicking themselves.
I think I like that story because it just kind of goes to show, like, yeah, it's an extreme, right? But like, it almost is definitely confirming the fact that, like, just do what you want to do and be authentic to yourself. I think that's such a massive and prevalent. It's an issue. It's a problem. Music producers, they make tight beats nowadays, right? Artists, it's like I hear so many, particularly in the rap industry and hip hop industry, everybody's copying everybody. It's a giant copy fest.
Yeah.
So being unique is 100%.
Well, and most of the first hip hop records were just James Brown samples. So I mean, yeah, it started mostly with other people's music, and that's what I kind of see as the challenge, to like push the envelope and do something no one else has done in hip hop, because there's this overarching speculation that it's all been done.
Yeah.
But pushing that envelope, I think, is a great goal, I think, to strive for.
This is kind of touching back to something you said earlier, but just with the fact that you've been in multiple bands, how do you go about networking and finding people you want to work with?
So my favorite way recently, and I guess this hasn't really changed over time, I love going to like open mics and open jams, and there are a few of them around town. There used to be a great one at Mile High Spirits on Tuesdays. I'm not sure if that one's still going on anymore, but there's another one at Metal Arc on Wednesdays called Off the Cuff. It's like a jazz, neo soul, hip hop, run by a guitarist named E-Man. Fantastic people come through there. There's another one on Tuesdays at the Milk Bar. That's really cool. I also just love going to shows of, people that I love, and I went to Domi and JD back last year. That was an incredible show. And I ran into a bunch of like-minded people that like the same kind of music, as you can probably imagine. But open mics are different because you show up with your instrument, and you can converse with people. What songs do you know? What songs do you love to play? And then you can sort of like form very informal bands, not like we're gonna go on the road for 5 years and take this to Red Rocks bands. But it's like, let's spend 5 or 10 minutes on stage with each other and see how it goes. And it's very lighthearted. And it's just a great place to strut your stuff with low pressure.
I kind of have a question. I want to bridge off that. So you said you went to school, like college, to study music, right? And you're talking about networking. So this is one thing I hear a lot. I hear young musicians are trying to get into music, and they're like, do I take on $40,000 worth of college debt to go learn how to make music?
Good question.
Personally, I wouldn't do that. I'm a producer, and I have worked in the same studio with people that went to college 4 years. They did all this stuff, and then I'm making beats, they're making beats, and it's like pretty parallel. I might not be 100%, but they aren't either, in just different areas. So college, I've heard, specifically in the music industry, it's networking. What would you say your value was that you actually got from going to college? Was it networking based or everything?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have gone to Bloomington had I not been accepted or applied to college. And then when I was down there, I met all the Main Squeeze dudes, which obviously opened up a bunch of doors. In college, I met a bunch of groups. One of my first college bands was called the Gentle Shades. We met in a class called The Music of Frank Zappa, which is really cool. And Frank Zappa makes crazy music, so you can only imagine what kind of music we made. But it was awesome, and I played with them for several years. And being in college is a fantastic networking opportunity, especially like the big university setting, because I was going to school with 40,000 people, and so there was no shortage of shows, whether it's a house show or like a small bar gig. There's a great venue down there called the Bluebird that we tried so hard to get into for years, and we finally did, and it felt so good. And we played several shows there, and a huge success. So yeah, I think if you already have a great method of networking, or like a great scene that you're in the midst of cultivating right now, maybe college isn't necessary for you to continue networking. But I also would never want to turn anyone off from wanting to acquire more skills or more knowledge in their in their craft. Could I do what I'm doing now without a college education? Probably. I could have just gone to a library and studied. I probably wouldn't have met the same people. Who's to say I wouldn't have ended up out here? Yeah, it's really tough to say. I hate to sound cliche, but like everyone's path is different, and everyone goes in their own way, and
Yeah.
like where you end up is where you end up in a way.
100%. And I had a question I was going to ask. It just slipped my mind. But talking about college, we were talking about. we might need to come back to. Oh, that's what it was. So you mentioned the events that you did. One thing you said, we tried so hard to get into this venue. So one of the biggest things as a digital marketing company, we're always focused on like the big Spotify, Instagram, YouTube. But I've got people all the time that are like, how do I make money? And we're like, well, events is a good way, just comparatively speaking. And so one question I have for you is, if I'm an artist, maybe I've never done an event before in my entire life. Maybe I've got some fans on Instagram and, people that are starting to know me in my area, but I've never done an event. Where do I go? Like, how do I do that? How do I get in the venue?
So that goes right back to networking. If you've never done an event yourself before, would it be safe to assume you have at least one friend that has or does do events?
Let's, for the sake of argument, say that they don't.
Yeah. Let's create a persona of the kind of individual I'm talking about. I'm talking about an individual that's probably year 2, maybe 3 into music, but they're entirely online, because that's a big thing. I mean, especially in genres of music where you can produce all online, EDM, hip hop, most of them pop, like nowadays.
Yeah.
If you don't play an instrument and you need to record in a band, like, you can just do that at home. So there's quite a bit of people. They've got their Instagram account and maybe the home studio, and that's it. Like, they don't have a network. They have no resources. If you're that person, how would you go about getting into a venue?
So you would have to most likely throw your own event. I'm sure there are venues out there that, if you sent them a very simple electronic press kit, as I'm sure you're aware of, that just says, this is my music and here's a photo of me. This is, what I do, and I'm fresh. There might be some venues that will say, come on by, right? We can't promise to pay you very much, but at least we'll have music on this Tuesday or whatever.
And it's even just getting the experience. Even if they don't pay you a lot, it doesn't matter. The next show, they'll pay you more. Right now, it's just getting the experience to continue to be able to do that.
I would say the best way to get in would be to throw your own event. If you have a friend with like a big backyard or like a big basement, or there are some places you can rent out, and maybe you do it for like a birthday, or you throw a party, throw a huge rager, and you get as many people in there as you can, and hopefully the whole focus will be you and your DJ set, and so, or your band, whatever the hell you want to do, and make sure you have a photographer there, and make sure you have a videographer. Well, videographers can be expensive, but have someone taking as much footage or creating as much proof and evidence of this event as possible. Seeing all the people there, and then when you send this to a legitimate venue, like say you want to start at Lost Lake or Larimer Lounge or something, you're sending them an EPK, but it's not just, here's my music, do you like it enough to let me play your bar? You're now showing that people listen to your music because there's all these people listening to you perform and watching you at this bar you're trying to get into. So you're creating credibility to the talent buyers and booking agents. So that would be my suggestion.
Which sets you up for future success down the road. And that's what somebody in that situation doesn't have. And then I'm sure you also network a little bit as well at the event. You should. Yeah. You should definitely not show up and just be moving bubble, you know what I mean?
I was going to say, if you do have a friend that is gigging, and it's an easy situation where you can be like, okay, we have like similar boards and setups. Like, can I just go and like spin a little bit during your set? Like, make it worth their while. Like, for instance, so I used to work at School of Rock, and we had like a rehearsal area there. And I remember when the main squeeze was in town, I hit up their bassist and I said, hey, do you want to come and do a master class at School of Rock? I have a bunch of students that are huge fans of yours, and we could like fill the place. We could charge, you know, we could make that an event, and the whole event is going to be about you talking about your bass rig and your bass philosophy and everything. And it was a huge success. And if you make it worth the other performers' while, then they could have you come on during their set playing to their fans, and then they get to sort of absorb you and your art. And then at that venue, you can like talk to the bartender, talk to the people working there, and be like, hey, who books at this venue? Like, you just saw me play. Like, who would I get in contact to, you know? So
Connor.
I don't want to call it weaseling your way in that way, but like that is a way in.
It's a really good transition to my next question, which is, how do you approach live events, and how do you connect with the audience when you're there?
Depends on the style.
That's a whole course.
Depends on the style of music I'm playing. Some music, you know, I've been in like indie rock groups where like if you engage too much with the crowd, like they're not into it and they think it's cheesy and they're gonna walk away. Metal shows can be like that too. Depending on the type of metal though, jam bands are not that way. You should really like engage with the crowd and make sure you're getting eye contact with people. You can do some like gimmicky stuff, like I've been in bands where like the guitarists and I will face each other, and then we'll start like playing each other's instruments and just like doing fun stuff to like make it memorable, right? Like you can go anywhere and watch four dudes that's like bang away at their instruments, but when they start doing funny shit like that, like that's when it becomes kind of like a spectacle in the audience's eyes.
One question I have for you, so I mean, you mentioned that, you know, you worked at School of Rock and you've done a few things. Obviously, you're doing gigs. You are a practicing musician. If I'm somebody maybe in a situation like yours where I've been doing music for a little while, or this is not necessarily for the people that are like just getting into it, but like long term, how do you think you can actually make a living? Not millions of bucks, right? But just pay the bills, make a living with a music career in the digital age.
I'm blanking on the name of the actual book, but Joel Cummins is the keyboardist for Humphreys McGee, and he wrote a fantastic book called A Realistic Guide to the Music Industry, or it's either A Realistic Guide to the Music or A Realistic Guide to a Career in Music. And he goes through all the ins and outs of like discovering your strengths within a group if you play in a group, or he lays out all the different avenues you can basically make a career in music. But one of them is, in addition to performing, I agree with something you said a while ago, where performing live, I believe, is the most lucrative way to earn a living. And I also think merch, like there's huge opportunity there, but it requires like a fairly large upfront cost, and recouping that takes some time. So it's not immediate money. And I also feel like unless you're playing like huge shows, like the stuff's not going to go flying off the shelves. So like merch is like, invest in it when you're ready and when you think your audience and fan base is ready for it.
I think the best way to do merch is actually selling it at your shows.
Exactly.
Especially if you don't have like an incredibly large fan base. And the other thing that's kind of interesting about merchandise is, in this day and age, I've seen people that drop ship their own merchandise, print on demand. So the upfront investment usually is
$0.
Oh, I just bought 300 t-shirts, right? But now you can just kind of print that on demand. But I still think trying to sell those kinds of things in person is going to be the way to go. But you got to get those shows. So kind of tying this all together, I think if you actually started off kind of day one, working on just networking as much as possible, whether you're going to school or doing whatever, right? Finding friends, finding supporters, building this group of people that you're working with. Don't be afraid to work with people and use your connections. Your net worth is your net worth, right?
Yeah.
So if you're an artist, you're just starting out, try to get that first show. Might be at a backyard, might be in a, some weird place, a basement, right? But just create a party. Right? Create a party, make it really enjoyable. Take some just video evidence of how awesome it all is, right? Even if it's all your high school buddies together and everybody's blasted and having a crazy time, right? Take a video, because that's what the venues want to see. build that up. That's how you're going to make some money, right? Just your first initial inklings of income. And then maybe, you know, coming from a business perspective as a marketing guy, you can take that income, invest it online. Online is a big piece of things now, right? Some of it, right?
Definitely.
Equipment, online, spiral that up. And and the thing is, the reason I'm connecting it all together is because this is exactly what I tell artists 90% of the time. They're like, how do I do this? And I'm like, well, there you go. And so that's kind of why this was really valuable, because it's like we connected all the dots. And so now I just want people to understand, like, it can be done in the 21st century. Yeah. You can actually make money. And if you, it really just, I think it requires three things. I think it requires a pretty good amount of slightly crazy ambition. Maybe you're calling yourself a little crazy. Maybe you should probably, the people around you should probably call you a little bit crazy. That's always my idea. If you're not getting called crazy by somebody, you're not ambitious.
You're not doing
enough.
it right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is consistency. Consistently being insane. Yeah. Maybe getting maybe a little bit more insane every single year.
Yeah.
Right. Vision here, reality here, but this is where you were.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and keeping that up. And then I think the third thing is just networking. Networking. If you can do those three things, I think anybody can scale that music career up.
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah, and I think like in tandem with performing live, there are all sorts of other avenues in music you can perform to make some side cash. Like if you find yourself, you know, booking yourself a lot of shows, but you like have fostered a network of a lot of musicians that are also trying to gig a lot, but maybe they don't have the same booking prowess that you have. Well, you can set up like a little miniature like booking agency and say, all right, well, I'll book for you and I'll take like 20% of the guarantee. And since you're the one discussing the guarantees and the deals, it's like really hard to get like hijacked or screwed out of cash, and you're just you're firing off a few emails and you make some side money.
Almost like your little own. There is a lot of people that want to start like their little own like label. That's kind of what you're talking about. Like it's not 100%, but you're like 75% of the way there.
Yep.
And that's the really cool thing about music is if you, again, network, net worth. If you have all these people that you've come in contact with, all these musicians are trying to get somewhere, if you do that networking, you leverage those resources. And again, it just comes about to ambition and consistency. You can build yourself up to a level where now you can use your network to actually start making you income, right? You use that network initially to get seen, and then pretty soon that network pays you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's actually, so it's reversed from the way it used to be. Like you used to be in a band or you used to be an up and coming DJ, and like a record label would like sort of sift through the rough and be like, oh, that one's good, let's sign them, right? And then because they got signed to a label, they got all these new fans and they got all this exposure and they got these big tours and this, that, and the other. But it's kind of worked the reverse now. Every artist is their own brand. And so that kind of speaks to the, if you want to call it the superficiality of the industry, right? Like every name is a brand, and it's either tattered or it's like on the up and up. And so now record labels are essentially signing artists not because they think they have potential, but because they're already established and they already have a big fan base. So they're sort of, that label's sort of like buying their fan base in a way. And so it's sort of a thing where, like, instead of catching your big break, nowadays it's more like this big snowball effect where, like, you just have to keep consistent effort in order to.
You don't even need a label.
Not really. They help.
They help?
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing, right? It's it could be a win, but there's that kind of underlying thing. So I think as an independent artist, you're essentially like an entrepreneur. You've got your product. You think it's pretty awesome. You think it's great, whatever that is, whether it's your own original or you're just reselling somebody else's stuff. But obviously the original stuff usually goes farther, right? But you've got this product, and a record label's coming in, and they're saying, well, we'll help you market this product, but we're going to sell the shit out of it, and we're going to take 75% of that profit. I think in this day and age, anybody's got access to Instagram and Spotify and YouTube.
Yeah.
You don't need a record label to distribute anymore.
Nope.
You need $35 in a DistroKid account.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't need I think if you utilize your network, a lot of people are like, money's the problem. I can't afford to do marketing campaigns online. I'm like, okay, well, figure out how we can actually monetize this brand first. I mean, you're jumping the gun. You want to see numbers, but you don't even have the initial, like, you're trying to build a skyscraper with no base.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, putting that all together, like, I don't even think I've seen independent artists who get millions and millions of streams and they make well into a 6-figure income every single year, and that's like 100% theirs.
That's awesome.
And they're, when you get motion like that, you can scale that up so much. And
Yeah.
I don't know, I think artists that strive for record deals these days are a bit outdated. Or they're just looking for an easy path, but they're just going to end up in 2 years with a terminated record label contract, maybe with a little bit bigger name, but where do you go from there,
Probably no money left in their pockets, and probably like a loan still to repay the label for all their services.
And they never learned how the label actually marketed their music.
Yeah.
If you take the time as an independent artist and you educate yourself and you work on all these things, then you actually know how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of just getting left out of a 2-year contract with no money left and you have no idea how they did. So now you just got this stagnant fan base. You're like, where do I go from here?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
it's kind of like billionaires, if they lose all their money, they know how to build back up. It's the same thing with that.
we've seen that happen a lot of times, actually. And I think that's the way independent artists should look at it. Don't look for the easy way out. Learn how to do it.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I think sometimes if you're a successful enough independent artist, you can birth your own record label from that success. It's the sort of thing where, like,
We've seen that a lot.
Yeah. If you're like an independent entrepreneur, and you're successful, you're going to have an agent being like, hey, like, sidebar, I want in on that money, but I can like bring all these extra services to you and do all the non-sexy, boring stuff that comes with being in the music industry while you're over there creating and focusing on your craft, and together we'll make more money together. But then, like, once the agent is there, then like you start talking to a lawyer to talk you through some of these contracts that any potential record label might want to throw your way, and develop negotiation points. And so your team builds, and then pretty soon, if you have a big enough team, if you're not already signed to a major label, hopefully between all of your crew members, you've got someone who specializes in sync licensing, and then you have someone else who can be your booking agent. You have someone else who can be your tour manager, and you've hopefully found a way to generate passive income from all of your streams, and well, probably not passive from your shows, but like you've created such a money-making machine with your art that you can begin to extend those same services out to other artists that are like-minded, similar vibe, et cetera, et cetera. And then I would probably, instead of striving for a record deal, once again, you're relying on external factors, right, which are totally unpredictable, and there's no solid formula for landing a record deal. There never really has been. So people who are chasing that, it's like, that's a very tall hill to climb. I would rather make my own label and like figure out copyright law myself, and do all these other things that a record label would otherwise do, just do it myself. And then if I have a learning experience, if I like mess up and fall on my face, I'm like, well, I only have myself to look at for that, and I don't have this $200,000 loan to this record label that I have to pay back now because I made this big mistake, or I got a new producer got assigned to me and him and I didn't click, and so they dropped me, right?
Yeah.
So all these variables could just come and like whack you in the face at any minute, and it might be a little selfish, but like being in control from the beginning, I think might be like the best way to go.
Wrapping this all up, we don't have too much time left, so I think the biggest takeaway I want the people watching this podcast to just take in and realize, we've talked about basically, I think this was a very good episode. Like, we covered a lot of stuff. There was a lot of meat in there.
Good, cool.
And one of the big things to understand is I just can't express the importance enough of actually, as an artist, focusing on that music first. If you look at any successful entrepreneur, they have developed a quality product before they worry about the marketing and the business and the money, right? So as an artist, I think taking from this podcast, obviously we've talked about networking, and we've talked about marketing and monetizing and how to build it, right, in this crazy thing that could be one day, work. I see too many artists that skip from point A to point B.
Yeah.
They just are like, okay, I recorded this song in 30 minutes, but we're ready to go on the marketing now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa.
Slow down, bro.
I listen to the music. Nobody likes that. Like, you might be in your own bubble, but it's not even good enough. I mean, you got to take the time there. So, biggest takeaway from this, like, obviously everything we've discussed is very valuable. And I think everybody should take that into massive consideration. But at the same time, just focusing on the music and make sure that's 150%.
Yeah.
And then do everything else you want to do.
The last question I wanted to ask before we wrap this up is, what advice do you have for people who are just starting out?
I think going right off of what you just said, and make it for yourself.
Make it for yourself. Focus on the music.
Fuck everyone else.
Yeah.
That's how it is, honestly.
Yeah.
But fuck everyone else. However, don't. You definitely need everybody else. You know what I mean? So,
Network,
one track minded. Love yourself. I think that's the biggest.
There you go.
Not fuck everyone else, just love yourself.
That's a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Love yourself, love your music, believe in yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you got it.
Yes.
Well, Carl,
absolutely.
it's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been great.
I really appreciate
Great
your first guest on the podcast. Tons of value.
It's an honor.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe we'll have you back in like 20 episodes, 30 episodes when we've got all these followers now.
Yeah.
Cool.
We'll be able to get you back on here.
I would love that.
Yeah,
That'd be awesome.
Sweet.
Alrighty. Well, that's a wrap.
All right.
To Craft and Artist, episode 5.
Appreciate you.